Welcome to Closing Day. Closing Day is a local real estate show that covers everything in real estate from the first moment you think about buying real estate right up to closing day. My name is Geoff DelGrand. I'm your host. And today our topic's going to cover closing day. And who better to have us here other than the chap that takes care of closing, which today we have Chris Harrison from Harrison Law Firm. And Chris, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Geoff. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're going to have some fun today because closing day is the most important moment in a person's, purchase. That's when they get the keys from you, they're excited, they're running to their house, and you're the one that makes all that happen. The real estate agents do what they need to do, the mortgage brokers do what they need to do, but we're all scrambling around, and you're the one who brings it all together to fruition, so when the person finally gets those keys in their hands, I'm sure you're the one that gets the high five, thank you very much, and out we go.
Well, there's, first of all, I might have to make a bit of a true confession here, Geoff, but
all right.
I am supported by a terrific staff, so when you say I'm the one that makes it all happen, I'm going to give a lot of credit to some of my staff members. I have some very senior and very experienced law clerks working for me. So I'm really lucky in that regard. But you're right. Closing day is exciting. It can be pretty frantic at times as well, as you well know. But it is exciting to be able to pass off a set of keys to people who are about to set foot in a new home, particularly first-time buyers. I get a real buzz out of putting keys into the hand of a first-time buyer and holding their hand a little bit through the whole process, because if you remember, whenever we all bought our first homes, it was a mixture of dread and excitement.
Yes,
so there's a little bit of hand holding involved there as well.
You have anyone cry tears of joy as they're getting the keys?
Oh, I've had all manner of reaction, but generally it's generally when we put the keys in their hands, they're not in the office for very long because they're so excited to get over there and get into their new digs.
Yeah. So just sort of as a summary of the legal process from the beginning to the end, I don't want to get into every detail, obviously, but where does it start? When does the client first hear from you, or you hear from the client, and sort of what are the steps that people have to go through?
Well, typically we're the last group of professionals that get involved in the transaction, although that's not always the case. Right. Sometimes realtors will ask us about particular clauses or some issue that they may be aware of in advance of the transaction. Sometimes we're reviewing the agreement of purchase and sale before it ever becomes final. But I would say that typically we're the last group to get involved in the deal. Whenever the deal comes in, based on closing date, we have staff members that will contact the client and get information. It's minimally invasive information. Right. For example, if it's a sale transaction, we'd be asking how they pay their taxes, who pays their taxes, what status the taxes are in. Sometimes they're in arrears. Who their mortgage might be with and that sort of thing, so that we can get our file properly moving towards the information that we need to close. So for example, on a sale, the reason we need to know who the mortgage is and the mortgage number obviously is because one of the components of delivering clear title to your purchaser is dealing with the mortgage and having it discharged.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be sort of the opening stages of the transaction. On purchases, of course, there's the title searching phase where we do our title search and we do a requisition letter to the selling law firm, setting out what we've found on title and the things that we need, and as well as certain representations or warranties that might be found in the agreement of purchase and sale. So that all sets the stage for the preparation of the closing documents. Okay,
so about how many days before, say, closing day would they expect to hear from your firm?
Well, they should be hearing from us within a few days of the agreement coming in. So that's a function. That's a function of the interval of time between the agreement being signed and becoming firm and binding and the actual closing date. Typically, they're hearing from us within a week or so of the agreement of purchase and sale arriving in our office, so that we can get our client intake forms filled out. They would be hearing from my staff members probably a couple weeks prior to closing, asking certain information. Where do you want to pick up the keys and
Right.
all of that kind of thing. Typically, I meet with them 1 or 2 days before closing. And sometimes that's also a function of, when do documents like mortgage instructions arrive. So we are, to a certain extent, on purchases, we're a little bit dependent on banks and lending institutions to get mortgage instructions to us in a timely way. On sales, getting the discharge information is pretty critical for us to be able to give the full financial picture to the client.
Yeah, no, I have been in your office before, and I recognize the fact there's a pile of people working there, and it's a busy place. There's papers flying, and there's people on the phone, and it just seems like there's so many hands that have to touch a deal to make it happen, to bring that closing together.
Well, on closing day, there's a lot of things going on in the background that clients may not really appreciate. They sort of they might come into my office to sign the documents with me perhaps 1 or 2 days before, and not really realize that on closing day, in advance of closing, we're requisitioning mortgage money from a mortgage lender.
Yeah.
We may be answering last-minute questions from the mortgage lender about certain aspects of the client's identification, because we're submitting documents ahead of time, including client identification.
Right.
Sometimes there's issues about insurance. Maybe the insurance broker didn't get the right address of the mortgage lender on it. There can be any manner of things that are going on, as well as the exchange of documents between law firms, getting keys, getting the banking done. So there is a lot of activity on closing day.
Right. Yeah, I could imagine. Well, like I said, I've been in your office. I've seen how busy everyone gets. Now, if someone comes in with an offer and they've paid more than asking, like the asking price, which happens all the time, does that affect anything to do with closing day? Is there anything with land transfer tax? Is there anything to do with insurance? Is there anything that...
Well, what I would say, I don't think that if someone paying over an asking price doesn't necessarily affect what we do on closing day. Mm-hmm. But I will say that I've had deals that have been affected by that scenario. And what we've found, and I think most realtors are pretty good about this, but I have found on occasion that perhaps the clients have been, or the purchasing clients in that scenario, may be unaware that they're putting a lot of faith in whatever the appraisal might come in at. Yeah. So for example, if someone bought a house and it was listed at $400,000 and they agreed to pay $500,000 for it, the burning question is, what is the appraisal going to come in at? Because if the appraisal comes in at $400,000, the fact that the client has now contractually bound themselves to pay $500,000 means that the bank isn't going to finance that extra $100,000. Right. They will base their financing, and of course, as you well know, that's based on a percentage of the appraised value of the home. So if you're to avoid things like the high ratio mortgage insurance, you've got to put 20% down. Yeah. So in that case, the bank on a $400,000 purchase is only going to finance a maximum of 80% of that, being $320,000. But the client has agreed to pay $180,000 more, $500,000 for the home. That money has to come from somewhere, and let's hope the client has it in their mattress, because the bank's not going to finance them for that amount.
Or mom and dad might get a phone call.
A late night, you talk about tearful phone calls, that could be one of them. So
I know. Now, what about if someone, they sell their home, but it doesn't close until, like, let's say they bought a home closing the 1st of next month, but they sold their home, doesn't close until the 15th of next month. They're going to own 2 homes for a couple of weeks. Now, is that something, it's called bridge financing. Right. How does that work with the legal end of things? Is there...
Well, I don't know how other lawyers handle this, but on a bridge loan situation, I don't charge anything extra. I feel that it's part of the service being provided in terms of getting people into their new home on the purchase side. Okay. I'm a big fan of bridge financing. We are finding that in this day and age, When I say there's a lot going on in the background on closing day,
Yeah.
sometimes we are fighting, pleading, begging with mortgage lenders to provide us with the mortgage money so we can get the deal closed.
Right.
So you can imagine that if you're selling and buying on the same day, and we have to sell first before we can buy.
Yeah.
That's the sequence. There can be no other sequence. The sale must take place because we have to take the money from the sale to fund the purchase.
Right.
So you can imagine that if anything happens upstream of that process, as with our purchaser's mortgage company, or perhaps our purchaser has to sell before they buy,
Yeah.
you can see that we can get into a string of transactions, and anything upstream can cause our transaction to break down. So if we don't get that sale done, and we still have to close the purchase, then there's a breakdown there, and contractually our client could be in a bind. So I'm a big fan of bridge financing,
Yeah.
which allows the client to actually purchase their home.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their new house on the day of closing of the sale house. And essentially the way bridge financing works is the bank turns your existing home into an ATM machine. They give you a card, you stick it in, and you take out a bunch of equity that allows you, in conjunction with your new mortgage, it allows you to complete the purchase. So they're in their new home a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will bridge for a little bit longer period because they might want to do some painting or some fix-ups or whatever. They're in their new home, and whatever happens on their sale is going to happen. I'll say this, that I've never charted it, but I'm going to say that based on my experience, 98 or 99% of the deals that don't close on time eventually close.
Okay.
And the way I was trained in real estate is the best deal you have is the deal you have. So if I'm not worrying about getting squeezed on the purchase side of things, if all I have to worry about is the sale because the client's bought first,
Right.
then I'm quite comfortable in allowing transactions to extend by a couple of days or whatever to allow the financing to take place. I mean, you don't want your client to be out of pocket anything. So if there's a bridge loan that's to be paid out, if there's a mortgage that we're planning on paying out on closing day, we
Okay.
attach all of those costs to the purchaser that's delayed.
That's good to know that. It's and bridge financing, I understand, does make a lot of sense. It's more convenient. Something I do want to touch on is, and we'll do this after break, is firm deals. It seems like real estate agents are saying to the clients, if you want to buy a house, you have to go in firm. And this is creating a whole new dynamic to the market now.
Absolutely.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about firm deals and how to handle them and the details around them.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.